Yes.
Good evening and welcome to the March 5th, 2025 Yarmouth Planning Board meeting. I am Joanne Crowley, Chair. This is to formally advise that as required by Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 38, paragraphs 18 to 25, and pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, an act relative to extending certain state of emergency accommodations signed into law on June 16th, 2021, the Yarmouth Planning Board will hold a public meeting on March 5th, 2025 at 5:30 PM. The public is welcome to attend in person this evening or via alternative public access provided on the notice of meeting available on the town website. I'll begin by taking roll call. Susan Britta.
Here.
Deirdre Gaquin.
Here.
Will Rubenstein.
Here.
Jim Saban.
Present.
Peter Slovak. Ken Smith.
Here.
Joanne Crowley present. Seeing that we have a quorum present, I'll now call the meeting to order and ask that we join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the
the flag of the United States of America, and
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
And Ms. Tom's oorah.
The first item on our agenda this evening relates to committee assignments. The current listing of committee assignments is in our packet. We establish these generally in September of every year,
Still will.
and we still will. Thank you, Kathy. Bill Scott sent out a note today that Kathy has kindly made a copy of regarding the library building committee and MOC. I'd like to first review in his memo, his expectations on time commitments required for the library building committee for this new assignment. And then we follow with a discussion on all assignments. I think it would be best as well to confirm our current assignments. Peter Slovak, who is unable to join us this evening, has expressed an interest in continuing his position on CEDC. So if I may, we've been asked to assign someone to the library project. And at our last meeting, Kathy had included a memo from Bill Scott with regard to the plan for that committee. And it's rather aggressive. It's a note from Scott to Robert Wittenauer. And it has a calendar associated with, and in his note to me, Mr. Scott wanted to make sure that we all understood this is going to be a very aggressive timeline that will require a real commitment of time between now and the end of the year. This grant is funded by a project with a demanding schedule and a fixed budget, he says. So that if you look at, you probably don't have it with you, but I do, the milestones.
It's up on the screen.
Yeah, the milestones as shown on the screen. The building committee, select board established it in February. And now they are in the process of selecting an architect RFP for the process in February and March. The site selection, February to April, and schematics, April to November. It's a compressed, very aggressive schedule, and it's driven by the state. So I just wanted to make that very clear for those of you, and there are a couple I know members who are interested and maybe more, that this is going to require a fair amount of time, and probably during the summer. But what I'd like to do first is I would like to just, I think an approach might be to confirm our current assignments. If you would like to stay on where you are for the existing board members, I'd like to lock that in first.
I guess
Kathy?
my only point would be is that we're going to be doing the assignments in November, but now that we have a new member, I know that you doubled up on a couple.
Yeah, I have two.
So I think the idea was to relieve you a little bit of one of yours and then put someone to the library planning, and everyone else would stay where they are until September. when
Oh,
we do our
okay.
regular.
That's fine. This is one of the reasons why I talk to you before every single meeting, Kathy. And today, for the first time in 4 years, I didn't.
Whacker.
I'm filing taxes for old people,
Thank
Reasonable
you.
excuse.
getting them circuit breakers. And I bet none of you know what those are. Anyway, that's a good idea, Kathy. So, our existing list, which I think I have here somewhere, Kathy.
Screen two, Madam Chair.
Right.
It's on the back of this.
It's also on the back of the first page of our,
I am on community housing and CPA. And I don't know who else is on two. Anyone else on two?
looks like
Right,
Jim is technically on
two.
Design Review Committee and then Land Disposition.
Land disposition
hasn't been meeting very
doesn't
frequently.
meet very frequently, right, Jim? Have you gone to, have you actually been to a meeting?
Originally, yeah.
A long, long time ago.
So what I would like to, for me, what I would like to do is I would like to stay on CPA, which means Deidre, you would then pick up my position on community housing.
Okay,
Is that okay?
that
Great.
sounds good. I
Um,
don't really know
it-
what the demands are, but I will learn.
Well, it's part of the muck. And it's, there's a ramp up in terms of understanding the business of housing, affordable housing. But Mary Wagon is an expert, and will get you ramped up as soon as she can.
Just so you know, this is something that I will send in the recommendation if it gets voted this evening, but I do believe they still want it to go to the select board to formally vote with the appointments. So they are meeting on March 17th. Even if you're not officially appointed, you might want to attend and kind of get your feet wet. And I can certainly talk with Mary about getting you some materials on all of the Matakey's utilization stuff that's been done. The housing group, the housing team is ahead of the other groups, so they're actually starting to look at their three ideas and then trying to move that down to one idea. So they're a little bit further along.
I'm going to go over a little bit of that from our meeting at the end of the month, yeah. The other thing is they meet on Mondays, Deidre,
Uh-huh.
3:00 if I remember. Yeah, so they're a Monday meeting, 3:00.
Typically once a month,
Yeah,
but now with the muck, it's been twice a month.
Okay,
okay, great.
okay.
All right. So for the other committee members, your current assignments, how does everybody feel about them? We'll start with you, Ken.
feels good about his right now.
What's that?
Well,
Yeah.
given where we are in time and space.
Yeah, time and space right now.
Great.
Madam Chair, capital budget is basically over for the year. We actually were in front of the select board last night and gave our annual presentation to them, which I believe was well received. There was a lot of thought and focus put into it. Bill Scott did the presentation because Cindy Fife was out sick, and did a very nice job presenting all the materials. We actually, I think we're in front of the board for about an hour last night. My comment to it, and this certainly can wait till the fall, but if we're going to be reshuffling the deck, I certainly would like to at least put my hat in for a reshuffle.
Okay.
I think capital budget's a hugely important committee to the town of Yarmouth. My issue with it is that it's a very compressed schedule in October and November to get ready, as I think other people that have been on it before. Many of the meetings are right in the middle of the workday. I still work full-time. So to jump out of work, to run, to go look at a fire truck or a police car or have meetings in the middle of the afternoon just doesn't work well to my schedule, to be candid with you. So all I'll say right now is certainly I think it's a hugely important committee to the town of Yarmouth. But if there's an opportunity to shuffle the deck, I'd at least like to have that, my card placed there for that.
Okay.
Now or in the future?
And
In
in
the future.
September.
In September.
Yeah, in the future, Jim. Yeah, right now it's, we won't meet again until the fall. We have one meeting scheduled for, I believe it's June. Because we are, as a committee, one of the things that we've asked is maybe we can relieve some of that pressure of having such a tight schedule in 2 months. If we could get some of the capital planning a little earlier, would help us get ready for the warrants for the fall town meeting and for spring. So that is something that we presented last night. It's not written into the charter, so it may be difficult at this point unless the charter gets rewritten so that we see capital numbers earlier. So that's a hope, but not a promise. So that's all. Like I said, I mean, I think Sandy runs a great meeting and the committee's wonderful. My only issue with it is the time commitment that's not fair to my employer and not fair to the committee.
Thank you, Ken. Next on our list is Peter Slovak, and as I mentioned, he is willing to stay on CEDC. I am on community housing now, and we'll go to the next couple of meetings. We do have 2 more meetings, Deirdre, so I'll try to bring you up to speed on those. But Deirdre will be replacing me on that once approved. As I mentioned, I would like to stay on CPC. Next up, Jim, on design review. You're good with that? Great. And Susan, is the drive-in utilization committee gonna go away at some point?
It's gonna go away. I think we're like, we need to come up with the use policy. We have an interim use policy when we didn't really have anything to offer, and then also coming up with some type of fees associated with renting out the special event. And then we also need to start thinking about how is those special events gonna be run and who's gonna run them.
And that committee will be,
They would provide, I think, some guidance on that.
okay.
And then, of course, it'd be nice to keep them intact until
Oh, yeah, till the.
to the ribbon cutting.
Ribbon cutting, of course, of course.
Not everybody wants to see us spin.
Well, it's-
Okay. And then Jim Lamb, just, Susan, I'm sorry, I apologize, I jumped over.
Given the fact that it is winding down, I would like to, I had expressed an interest to go to the library committee.
Right,
Although there are some things remaining on the drive, I mean, I could do 2 because this is sort of,
Yeah, we're kind of part-time, probably.
right,
what we
right.
think,
I mean, I
probably
could
got
do
like
driving, but
18,
my
but-
primary.
We don't have a significant amount of work. And if
Okay.
there's any naming
Moving to
rights
the
or
library
anything.
committee, picking up that vacancy in the library committee.
okay. And now we're at Mr. Rubenstein.
Hello.
Here we go, rack.
Yes, we're racking along. I have quite an update later in this meeting. Yeah, I certainly intend to stay on the rack. And yes, I'm also interested in the library building committee, but there are many mechanisms in which to serve the town, especially on this particular committee. And it doesn't have to necessarily be me as the planning board appointee.
Okay,
So, it's, I think between Susan and myself and Deirdre, there's a lot of knowledge about library stuff.
Deirdre
I'm
was
using
on
a
it.
technical term. Yes.
I think it would be interesting for me, but I think it's better. I was on the last library planning committee, and so it's good for a change. I think I'll always help with the demographic data. I'll be there. Jane knows that, and so.
and once this particular piece of the work is finished, they'll be continuing.
Yeah.
So I think this is going to be a committee that's going to be around for a while.
Yeah.
Probably for, I would say, 3 to 5 years at the very least.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
there's the opportunity for rotation every year. And that's, and many of us have done that, and it's a good thing, I think. So we can revisit that. So if I'm hearing you, Will, you had mentioned that you were interested in library, but
Yeah, but at the same time, literally, there's other ways that
Yeah.
members of the community
Yeah.
can serve on that committee without being appointed by the planning board.
okay.
And secondly, I am enjoying my work on the rack, and it doesn't sound like Susan has any interest in the rack, which is fine
No, I
at
love,
this time.
yeah, I love
'cause
the issue, but I'm.
course.
Right, but
I get it.
I live next door to John DeLiso, so I always find out about what's going on.
I see. Well, I would also say, that's a committee that will be meeting well past the 5 years,
Yes.
and may very well outlast all of us. So there'll be an opportunity in the fall to have those discussions, Madam Chair. So I certainly understand where Susan's coming from, given the fact that we need to appoint somebody, and Susan certainly has the talent and the bandwidth to do it. But I feel like I can also contribute to that committee in other ways,
Thank you. Will.
and maybe at other times. Thank you.
So with that, we need a formal vote and a motion. May I have a motion to nominate Susan Britta to the Library Building Committee?
So moved.
We have a second? Any discussion? All in favor?
I,
Okay, that was easy. Thank you. And thank you, Susan. Very much. Let's move all that over here. Okay, next up, Kath, is local comprehensive plan.
Yes.
The review of the January 29th LCP community meeting notes as provided in our packet. And then just a general update from Kathy on where we are with the BSC group.
I think you all had in your packet the nice summary, which gave a summary of the whole process, but also a summary of the key themes that we can kind of talk about a little bit. But I would really encourage everyone to go into the details of each of the notes. They were very well done of each individual groups. There was 4 in-person groups and 2 online groups. And there was a lot of really good information. What I did really like seeing was that there was a lot of similar ideas. So there was a lot of thoughts of people like, so it gives you an idea of whether, it's a true group and consensus building idea or whether it's kind of a one-off idea. So some of the things with the themes had to do, obviously, the economy. We spent a lot of time talking about the economy, and I'm really glad we concentrated on that because I think we got a lot of good ideas. We are also getting some of that as part of the Matakees Utilization Project. We're hearing some of the same ideas. Again, all good to be hearing some consistency and building that consensus. I think everyone was really interested in, and we keep talking about village centers, using art, museum, recreation, sporting venues really to enhance and focus on the off-season use. I think we saw that with the Muck with some type of indoor sporting complex or convention center, entertainment. And then using some of the anchor locations that we have, the Parkers River Landing, we have the Widow Pirate Museum, we're working with the Route 6A, Village Center, and then of course, the inflatable park. We have a lot of good things in town, so kind of use those anchor businesses and kind of go off of them. And also diversifying the public art golf courses. Maybe it can be more than just golf. Maybe there's some things that can happen in the off season with sledding. I know people do that at Bass Rivers. And have some fun that way. And other things, identifying, having a community identity. We have a lot of culture and history and environmental resources and types of things to really help tell the story of Yarmouth and the town of Yarmouth. And I know that that's something that the select board was also very interested in, having historic tourism, so to speak. Looking at really, and the other thing that kind of came out was a lot of like improving our marketing, having more promoting ourselves, more promoting the off season, and also promoting different things in the winter. How can we advertise and bring people all together so people are fully aware of all different things that are going on in town? Facilitating public transportation between locations. There was talk of a trolley or different type of buses or a stretch golf cart. I hadn't heard about that before, but that's interesting. To kind of like maybe a summer thing, a nice cute little trolley or something to get people around town. Trying to get restaurants to stay open in the shoulder seasons. Sometimes it's hard for us permanent residents to find a place to eat. And that certainly would be nice for everyone. Obviously, people are interested in streamlining the permitting process for entertainment. They know that obtaining temporary entertainment license, that's something that can happen now. Obviously, that's what people do. So that might be something that we can strike because that's something that's currently going on. Establishing an outdoor community swimming pool. I had heard about an indoor one, so an outdoor one was a little bit new to me. Obviously, lots of people talking about redevelopment of the Great Island Plaza and what can the town possibly do to be more proactive to see that something happens there. Obviously, we've always been talking about encouraging mixed use and how can we make that happen in town. Really promoting that top of shop housing so we retain our commercial corridor. Also focusing on, the public realm, what the final roadway design is going to look like post sewering. That's something that we want to make sure that that looks nice. Focusing, and then some of the people were talking about different areas to focus redevelopment efforts, mainly on Route 28 in the old Main Street, North Main Street area, the Four Corners, as we refer to it. At Higgins Kroll Road there and Berry Avenue, that's another intersection that might have an opportunity. Trying to incentivize things by establishing a tax increment financing zone so that people get a break on their taxes for a little while as their business gets going. And then also trying to attract businesses that offer different activities and experiences. So you can come and have like an entertainment destination location. People had talked in my group about where would you go on a date? Have a place where you can go on a date, have activities, ping pong, things that you could do like that. as well as different types of recreation, different conversations about aquaculture and agriculture, ecotourism and the blue economy and different ways that we might be able to tap into that. And then, leveraging, we obviously have Cape Cod Healthcare here. How can we leverage that to draw complementary businesses for our community? Amending zoning, I think there's going to be a lot of amending zoning things that come out of the LCP, but I think they're to encourage attractive frontage. I'm assuming that means to improve the aesthetics along Route 28, especially as sewers are coming along. I really like the idea of marketing the community as being the home base to explore Cape Cod. I thought that was really, we keep saying that we need to be promoting our mid-Cape location, but I like you could do a whole thing, let Yarmouth be your home base so you can explore the entire Cape easily from Yarmouth, so I thought that was kind of a nice way of doing it. What's that?
It's just way ahead of us.
Oh, are
Their
they?
tagline is the heart of the Cape.
Yeah. I like just home base sounds.
The heart
good.
has many chambers, if I remember from sixth grade biology class, Jim.
Okay, lots of-
Touche. Sorry to interrupt.
But home base is a good idea if we start promoting the baseball league.
Mhm.
We
There you go.
somehow-
Oh, yeah, there you
we
go.
could Somehow tap and
it's
get the
interesting.
baseball league somehow identified with Yarmouth and then use the home base idea. That also,
Right. Plus our name comes first in the name of the team.
it's exactly
Right.
right.
Go. So, ha,
And I
Dennis.
think it might
Best in the Commonwealth.
have been Jim who said become known as like a recreation mecca.
Right.
So that with the home base, it might be a nice
Water park,
tie-in.
Water
And-
park,
Yeah,
drive inside.
it was kind of interesting. It might be a nice idea. Different land uses. I think this is kind of talking about where people wanted to develop. A lot of it was along Route 28, blighted properties, vacant properties for the Great Island Plaza. I think when they say Old King's Coffee House, not that particular development because I think they've done a nice job, but I
Yeah.
think the west end
area, yeah.
of Yarmouth.
The other side of the street.
Across the
Yeah.
street. yes.
Yeah, yeah, right. Look on the south side.
Street.
But that's also gonna be caught up with that, with the state when they start doing, that's
Yeah,
that's gonna
that's
drive something there.
We were
because
just
it all
saying.
either
depends.
going to drive people towards it or away from it,
Away
Ms.
from it,
Britta.
yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know which.
So obviously, it's the village, Yarmouth Port Village Center. So we have a few edits here, but obviously the Matakees Middle School property provides a huge opportunity for development and hopefully to meet a lot of our different needs. And then again, as I mentioned, the Four Corners. Housing, be more welcoming to developers who are constructing multifamily buildings. I actually think the staff does a really good job at that right now. We meet with people on a regular basis and provide information and review concept plans for them and kind of walk them through the process quite frequently. Expanding and promote incentives for businesses and commercial property owners to incorporate housing. I think it's incentivize mixed use maybe is what we're kind of looking at there. Addressing housing affordability, including creating more affordable dwelling units and working to align jobs and income with housing costs. I think Susan's been saying that all along. We need to increase the wages that we're paying to make that gap a little bit less. I'm not sure about evaluate the best uses for empty motels, other than like 3 near the inflatable park. I'm not sure that there's really any empty motels in the town of Yarmouth anymore. But I think the idea is just trying to find different places for year-round market rate housing and seasonal worker housing. Conduct education and be more outspoken regarding the need for more housing units. I think there's some people out in the public, this is my interpretation, that we're fine, we got enough housing, we don't really need housing. I think we need to talk about who's the people that need the housing and how does that affect all of us. It doesn't just affect the people who can't find the housing. It's going to really start affecting all of us when we can't have any workers or businesses or be able to go to the grocery store. Consider how to increase housing on Buckeye. And that was something that someone mentioned in my group. If we don't want to have the housing on Route 28, we might be able to do it the parallel road, so to speak, of Buck Island. Maybe there's some other ways. That's pretty heavily developed already with condominiums through an open space village development. So I'm not sure that there's much opportunity for that other than, as they mentioned, allowing taller buildings. Provide support and incentives for veterans, homeowners, and seniors aging in place. I think that's something that the Community Housing Committee and the Affordable Housing Trust are certainly discussing and talking about also as part of the MUC. Partner with Habitat for Humanity. They do a great job. They're going to be doing the project across the street, and they did 7 units on Virginia Street. So they do a great job. And they have the whole mechanism in place to go through a 40B. They know how to do everything. So it's nice to work with them because they have a good group of professionals. Increase housing programming to provide life cycle housing. So you kind of go and age in place. in a bunch of different variety of housing. Someone had mentioned co-housing, where you might have smaller units with some shared amenities like a community room. And then also looking at encouraging construction of more smaller single-family dwellings, ADUs, and tiny homes. And then the other thing was about increasing the knowledge and access to available social services and assistance programs. I think the idea was there's a lot out there. Is it all in one particular location? Can people readily understand where to get it? Consider the environmental impacts of additional housing. That's the other thing that some people even sent some emails to me as we keep talking about more and more housing. How's that impacting our infrastructure? And where is it going? And is it going to be causing adverse environmental impacts? So all good things to think about. Limit the number of short-term rentals in the community. Again, we are doing that short-term rental study with the Affordable Housing Trust and Community Housing Committee. So
But an estimated date of when that study will be completed?
I think it's going to be like October. Yep, I think they're looking at a 6-month process there.
Yeah, I believe it's this fall, Jim.
There was a meeting on that, right, Kathy?
We had a
So, yeah.
kickoff meeting, and we actually have another meeting on Monday to kind of talk about, they're going to be looking at different groups to interview and get some additional information from town staff and that type of thing. That's where they're kind of starting. I think that people are always trying to incentivize year-round housing in some particular way, whether it's market rate or for workforce housing. Implement local preference for housing waiting lists to allow Yarmouth residents to remain at the top of the list. And coastal resiliency and sustainability, getting rid of, obviously reducing asphalt, returning some coastal areas to naturalized spaces, what I've kind of referred to as undevelopment. Hopefully I'm talking enough into that.
Kathy, can I just ask a question before we move off housing? Has Mark received a lot of, I was trying to figure out how the ADU rewrite is going to impact it, if it would have the opportunity, of course, to increase housing. Do you know if Mark has received a lot of inquiries?
I've been getting more and more inquiries. Yep. Yes, he
So
has.
that will impact the whole affordable housing discussion, because that's going to be, there's not much there's not a lot of problems associated with getting an ADU. In other words, if you own, so that, is Mary factoring that into the conversation about housing?
I think the housing
potential for the
production plan
ADU?
assumed a certain number of additional units that would be created by ADUs. They wouldn't necessarily be capital A affordable, but they would provide additional housing.
Right, like I'm thinking of the seniors, because that was one of the, protected groups that we talked about. Our original zoning was affordable and seniors. And that's a huge group. So I'm just wondering how all that ADU rewrite factors into our whole housing discussion. Because it should have a positive effect on things like seniors. And people are seniors that live in the main house and they want to have a healthcare worker live in the small ADU. Because I do think it's going to be a significant piece now of our housing discussion is going to be the potential for ADUs. And the only way you can gauge that potential is, has Mark received a lot of?
He has.
Yes,
People have been
okay.
coming, and they seem to be under the impression that there's no regulations now, but there are
Oh, yeah,
regulations
until the other one's going
with
to affect.
regard to it.
Is it generally like for seniors, or is it just for rental properties? Does he have any idea of what the profile is of what those that are asking for an ADU permit?
I didn't ask him that, but I do know that he's been having lots of conversations about it, and we touched base with it. He had someone he was working with this morning who wanted to build a garage and an apartment above, and then sell their house and then afford to build the main thing. I think the concern that I have, and I want to talk to town council how we can make sure this doesn't happen, is, if you have an ADU on your property, you shouldn't be able to then rent out your home as a short-term rental. Because then there'll be people who, okay, I own this house, I'm going to live in this, and then I'm going to rent it out. So you're not solving the problem. You've doubled your density, but you haven't solved the problem. And that's my concern about all of this, is that they're rushing forward with all these different easing up of regulations, but make sure that you're just not tallying up the numbers. Oh, we had 20 ADUs. Is it solving the problem? And I think the way to get around that is through our short-term rental bylaw of saying if you have an ADU, you're not renting out. You can't have a
In-house,
short-term rental
yeah.
on your property.
And it'll be interesting to hear from our friends at the zoning board, because I'm sure they would, as they're considering these ADU applications, want to be.
Considering them though, because it's It's not a special permit anymore.
Right. It's
Oh,
no,
right. Oh, yeah. Well,
The
I
time they
gotta
would
stop
see
this
it,
whole way of thinking, friend.
I know.
Sorry.
Logical way of thinking.
Well, Susan, we had a process and unfortunately we got overruled.
The
I hear
use
you.
that's allowed
Mhm.
as of right. So if there's other things that they need relief on, if they're non-conforming with regard to their setbacks of a proposed expansion, that still would need to get a special permit, but the use itself is protected.
Thank you for the clarification.
Yeah, so I know, I thought the same thing. I said something to Dee about, you keeping track of that? And she's like, what are you talking about?
So just to clarify, does that mean in theory, could Mark go to the zoning board and say, gosh, yes, it's by right, but this is not, or is it, in other words, where does that issue that you're bringing up, which is completely unintended, but
It is a-
needs to be figured out,
it is a
where does
conversation
that
take
live?
place.
Where does that conversation live and how does it get corrected and what mechanisms and what, dare I say,
there's
how
a
many
couple
committees will it take?
mechanisms. Sometimes people actually meet with Mark and talk about it. That's why one of the reasons he's such a busy guy. And then he will direct them saying, oh, what you're proposing is triggering this type of special permit, not for the use. Or even if someone says, oh, I'm fine, and they submit an application, then they might say, oh, no, you need to go to the zoning board of appeals first in order to get relief for that.
So
Thank you.
I know this is, I'm digressing a little bit, but what information does Mark capture when they come in? Do we capture information on who the occupant of the ADU will be?
No.
All we know is who the owners are. We do know, or do we even know, we
Who's
must know
asking
that.
for it as opposed to who's in it.
For him to issue a building permit,
It's the property
it has to be
owner.
issued to the owner.
that's right.
So we would know who the owner is, but we don't know.
We don't know the intention that they have. Yeah.
Except that now there's more corporate creep thanks to the state changes, unless I misremembered.
No.
So
Correct,
if I'm
correct.
connecting some of your
That's- yeah.
dots, Madam Chair.
Yeah,
I mean, from our point of view, we would want those ADUs to address lack of housing, not short-term rentals, not anything other than.
That was our initial intent behind it.
Exactly right.
You mentioned the 24 months worth of work.
You keep adding months to it.
Not me, yeah.
It'll be 36 months.
It was 18, now it's 24.
24 months, it seemed like forever.
Right, there you go.
You walk uphill to
Yeah, I
school
mean,
and
this would
home.
be the law of unintended consequences where they have opened
Always a
Pandora's
snowstorm.
box and now they can't figure out how to control it
Well,
because.
it
the-
sounds like thanks to Mark and his very busy schedule, and also air traffic control work,
Right.
he's able to acknowledge what the state has done
Mhm.
and at the same time keep some of our local interests at heart and in mind. Thanks to you and him and Kathy.
Yeah, it's a CMR, just like the building code is, and I think
Mhm.
he's used to administering those. The tricky part becomes what part of our bylaw can we still keep people from doing?
Do we not restrict the ADUs from being used as a short-term rental?
The ADUs can't be a short-term rental, but that doesn't mean that you don't go and,
You live in the ADU.
That's
and
right.
your main house is
Yeah.
short-term.
Right.
or somebody,
Then the ADU, as far as I'm concerned. If the owner lives in unit A, whether it's the studio apartment or the 4-bedroom house, whatever unit the owner lives in, that's the primary.
that's interesting, yes. And then, so then they can't rent out the house.
That's how I would view it, but
Mhm.
you know.
but the owner doesn't need to live there. under
Thanks to
the
our friends at the
legislation.
state.
That's right, now they don't.
It could be, it could
be
be,
anyone.
you know,
Yeah.
the
rental.
postcard company that sends
Yeah.
something to me once a month, cash for your house.
Yep.
We buy ugly.
That's right.
Yes, we all need to talk into our mics, please.
Madam Chair, I apologize for the digression, but it did come up.
Oh,
in-
no,
And
no.
it's an ongoing
Yeah.
conversation, and that may have been later in the agenda, but I feel like we did it.
Yeah, no,
okay
it was
to do it.
worth the chat.
And, you know, as Kathy pointed out, the lack of definition from what the state handed us and the lack of very specific guidance. And it's the wild, wild west now of whatever interpretation you want to take. And that's going to be really hard for Mark and really hard for the zoning because every application could be different.
And that's why right now there's a lawsuit. I think it's Needham, one of the towns around Boston, is suing the state for that exact reason. Because there is a lack of definition. The town said, no, we're not going to stand for this. So I don't remember the town. I think it's Needham, but I'm not positive. But I do know there's a suit against the state from one of the surrounding.
Pointed out to someone, I don't know if it was a town council or someone from the state, that they expanded the interpretation of, what was it, ADU? You said, oh boy, you really like, with what you've written, you've really changed the
Yeah. It
definition.
was, I think what they defined a bus station, but they paddled back on that. And then what they considered to be single-family zoning,
Mhm.
it was basically everywhere.
Yeah.
And they paddled back on that. So we did get some wins. I think the biggest loss between the draft and the final was no minimum lot size.
Right.
So, yeah. Eeks.
Is it fair to say, Kathy, that you and Mark are also in a conversation with town council on an ongoing basis about how we're going to execute the state's wishes?
Yeah, it's one of those things that we need to coordinate on. Mark's obviously, he's already redlined some stuff so that that's kind of how he's interpreting it. But yeah, we need to sit down and go through it. I'm a little behind on the LCP, so I've
Well-
been working on that. But yeah, that's definitely something we need to get to. That's number 2 on the big list of getting to, for sure.
Please let the record show, Madam Chair, I'm not asking the town planner to do more work in place of her important work for the local comprehensive plan. But these things are happening in real time. And yet another example of how our friends in Boston don't necessarily think in the timeline that is actually
No.
executable. And I don't even know if I'm using that word correctly. Thank you.
And didn't we, at one point, maybe, and this was during the ADU discussion, didn't we talk about having like a joint meeting with zoning at one point?
We had one.
That's what, that.
Did we have one
no,
upstairs?
We did have
One
one.
for
no,
the
I'm talking
accessory
now,
apartment
this has come
bylaw.
out,
Oh,
yeah.
since the
Is
state?
there any, would that be worthwhile at this point to have another meeting with zoning to see how
They're
they're,
going there,
they won't be going there, that's right, exactly.
only for exceptions, real exceptions.
Yeah, I think the real key here is Mark and I sitting down, coming up with what we think, and then having a meeting with town council and see if what we think can stay in is not being unreasonable regulation, and getting his confirmation. He indicated there was something from the town council highlighting that this had been issued, but also that they had some concerns about enforcement of some of this stuff that still wasn't clear.
Yeah.
And again, it might be case law that ultimately determines some of these things.
Madam Chair, is it worth having a meeting with Mark at some point?
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
You can
oh, yeah.
understand his interpretation?
Yes, yes. What I'd like to do is meet with him, come up with the red lines, and then when we have him come to a meeting, and maybe even town council come to a
Yes,
meeting
That'd be great.
and explain all this stuff.
That'd be wonderful.
Yeah.
And also, I think one of the natural questions might be, Madam Chair, and I promise we can stop talking about this and we can continue on with the LCP. I think then we'd have to connect some of the dots about whether we need to make some changes to our zoning bylaws and whether or not which special town meeting or regular town meeting we need to start aiming for and then build a timeline that works backwards.
I would like to have something for fall town meeting. I don't want to keep it going. What it's going to end up being is you follow this CMR with these exceptions.
Okay.
So I don't think it's going to be as complicated as it is, but it's just digging into the details and writing it down and getting,
While we're in the middle of very important LCP work.
which we also want to have on the fall town.
Boy, all right, Madam Chair, I promise I'll stop talking so that.
Continue, Kathy.
Important work.
So we did get some more additional information on coastal resiliency and then also like sustainability. I think we had talked a little bit about protecting critical infrastructure. We have done that town assessment of vulnerable infrastructure, limit construction in sensitive areas such as flood zones, wetlands, and dunes. We obviously have regulations in place for wetlands and dunes, and we have performance standards now for work in flood zones. Prohibit or limit armoring of the shoreline. I don't think armoring really is even allowed by DEP anymore, but the point's well taken because you're just pushing the problem further down the line. Regulate the use of fertilizers and daily watering. I think a lot of people are understanding that maybe we need to go back to our Cape Cod style lawns and not have these perfectly manicured lawns. Making sure that we're investing in our infrastructure and maintaining that infrastructure. Increase routine dredging and use the materials for beach nourishment. I think that's something that we are actively working on now since we received our 10-year permit in 2023. And then we're also actively working on, with the town of Dennis, with the Seaport Economic Grant of the dredge permitting for the north end of the Bass Rivers, which I don't think has ever been dredged. So that'll take 5 years to get that. Encourage additional electric vehicle charging stations. There's really not that many in town. Increase education awareness regarding sustainability practices, alternative energy options and incentives. Again, more education with regard to fertilizers and other chemicals. Look at additional solar energy systems and solar panels. I think one of the things we've been talking about is we need to have some type of regulations, at least with regard to solar canopies over parking lots and making sure that that's not being in front of all our, we spend all this time making these buildings beautiful, but if you're a pre-existing condition of a parking lot in the front and you put solar canopies over it, it's kind of defeating the purpose of the aesthetics that we're looking for, especially on Route 28. But to the side and the rear, it might be a very good option, as well as building mounted solar. Eliminate clear cutting of lots for new development, looking at reusing existing structures and encouraging adaptive reuse. I think that's good if the building is sustainable, but maybe buildings such as the Mattakees Middle School really isn't something that you can adaptively reuse. Looking for additional education for Yarmouth residents and property owners regarding flood insurance, and upgrading the town's stormwater infrastructure and promote energy aggregation and similar incentives. I didn't know what energy aggregation meant.
What's that?
It's like when you kind of all go in and buy energy together. I was unfamiliar with that. I have been reaching out to the Energy Committee because trying to meet with them. I haven't really heard back from them. They're a little, I think they lost some members. Obviously, Joyce was a major driving force on the Energy Committee. So hopefully we can get some additional information from them. And then that's just talking, each individual group had their summary, which I did find to be, it's definitely worth going through. Very good nuggets of information in there. So what I'm doing now is I'm taking all of the different interviews. There's some additional information that I'm going to be providing to you. I got some additional information from Lori Rizala on our water system. I have some summary notes from the Recycling Solid Waste Committee. I have some comments from Historical. I'm also looking, I met with the health director on Friday. I'll summarize some of those notes. So I've been taking all of the information from all these different sources, and I'm kind of working on identifying some of the action items that we might come. I think we're getting a very, very clear understanding of the issues. Now we just need to start talking about some of the solutions. So hopefully that's something that I can work with BSC Group on and other town staff, because I want to get their buy-in and input on that. And then maybe we can be something that we can present at the first meeting in April to kind of give you guys to start thinking about some ideas for some action items. We're doing a lot already, and a lot of the action items are going to be complete this, because we are working on a lot of really good things in the town of Yarmouth. I think even BSC Group is kind of surprised, and they work with a bunch of different communities about all the things that we are actually doing here in the town of Yarmouth.
Kathy, with regard to the housing element of this, I thought at one point, the housing production plan I know is affordable, mostly related to affordable. How are we going to incorporate that document into the plan and segregate out those things that might be not affordable?
Yeah, I think there's affordable housing and then there's just community housing.
Okay.
So I think we're going to have some type of summary of the housing production plan, but we're going to still have the housing section with the goals, and then we can add on to the goals to kind of promote different types of community housing.
Okay.
So-
And I presume there's some consistency there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And some, also, since at one of our more recent meetings, the Cape Cod Commission has their regional housing
Yep.
strategies, that, is another layer
Right.
that I presume we need to take a look at and make sure that we're, that one in particular seems to have a lot of work has been done. I mean, the housing production plan has got a ton of action items in it.
Yes.
And I'm just wondering how the integration of all of these things happen in the housing section of the plan.
Still
Sure
working
it'll
on
come
it.
together. I'm sure it'll come together.
I've gotten through the natural systems, the built systems, and now I'm working on the community systems. And those are the biggest ones because it's economy, it's housing, there's a lot of big stuff in that one. So that's probably, but this information was excellent with regard to the economy. I thought it was a lot of good information. And again, like I said, all the stuff that we were learning from people about the muck process, we're getting some good information there too.
And when do you think might be a good time for us to think about updating the select board?
Oh, that's a good point.
If I recall, they wanted
Yeah.
they wanted to be kept in the loop. So think about that.
Let me talk to
we can
BSC
talk
group
it.
about it.
Yeah.
Yep.
When you think of a point in time when documents are at a position where we could do it. I mean, I know they're very busy now planning for annual town meeting.
Yeah.
Their calendar is chock full.
Probably
I
after the
presume it would
election,
be after that.
probably after the election, might have different select board.
Oh, that's true too. That's
I don't know who's
first
up for
week in May.
reelection.
Do we have a
Yeah,
date
that's
for the
May.
annual town meeting?
Yeah, it's at the end of April.
29th, I believe.
29th?
Last
That's
Tuesday.
late
But
April.
Jim makes a good point, Madam Chair, because then it also then gives the newly constituted select board the idea that they can start working backward from fall town meeting, which is
Yeah.
where we're going to be front and center. So
That's-
it does
that's a
give
very
them
good
the
point,
4
yeah.
or 5 months heads up
Yeah.
from May.
So after the election.
That was a good point, though, about when, I'll have to take a look and see when we were, I know that we had kind of paced that out already of when we were going to meet with them. But I think we're in good position now. We could certainly meet with them at any time and kind of just summarize the data that we've collected together, which is really the key issues that have been identified.
Well, you think about it.
It's a good, yeah, thank you for bringing it up because I hadn't.
Because we're going to have to do it again probably in the summer. I mean, I'm thinking we'll be doing it, not quarterly, but maybe
Yeah.
between now and December, at least a couple of times.
Oh, yeah.
Literally, we're going to have to
Least.
go back in September, Madam Chair, if it's going to be on fall town meeting, right?
Right.
Oh, yeah.
So,
yeah.
I mean,
It's also a formal public hearing that needs to be held on the entire, we've got a lot of work to do.
But I just, I want to stay ahead of them.
Yeah, we want to
Whatever-
we want to ask them to meet with them, not them say, why aren't you meeting with us?
Yes,
Yes,
that's what,
agreed.
thank you.
Agreed.
Once again, thank you.
Thank you.
that is the theme of tonight's meeting.
So I'm sure you've all read it. I think it's very, very good document. Like I say, I had a few spelling things that I'm going to suggest that they edit, and put it on I know they already have it on the hub, but maybe they can update it and put it on the hub. There's also the presentation that's in there that had the questions, inserted in there as well. So it's all good.
So you're gonna go back and make some editorial,
Very minor, nothing
Higgins
major.
Cole Road
Yeah,
spelled correctly.
Higgins correctly,
Yes, Yarmouth Port.
Landing.
Oh, I wasn't even gonna bring that up, but if you're gonna make sure you call Parker, okay.
And it's, it's South Sea Ave, not C Street. There's things that you don't know when it's like common knowledge to us, but so minor things, but everything else was pretty good. But again, the details, the devil's in the details, so they have a lot of good information.
I'm interested in this Destinations International in Washington DC.
It's interesting. You should look it up.
I Google it. Yeah.
John Parks was in our group and he's actually offered to provide some guidance. He actually does, I think tourism marketing is a profession. So that's something that maybe, I think he might be meeting with the CEDC or being invited there to have a conversation. So there was a lot of new people that I hadn't seen before at that, which I
That's great.
appreciated. Yeah.
I was thrilled by the turnout for the actually meeting. What we have 50, 60 people?
I think we had 50 or 60 here in the room and then there's like 40 people online.
From the land of Zoom, I would say I saw a lot of people that I've not necessarily engaged with
Yeah.
before, certainly directly. So that was exciting as well online.
So in spite of them saying
some
that
work
we
to
don't
do.
get the word out, apparently we got the word out.
A lot of work.
Yeah.
Next up on our agenda, update on the Matakees Utilization Committee.
Amok.
I think maybe the first thing is to continue with Bill Scott's email that got sent
Yep,
to you. You also have
that's good.
a copy here. There is a letter from the school superintendent kind of talking about the process for ME Small and just basically saying that they're not going to be beginning their feasibility study, it looks like until January of 2026. So that they're recommending that we block off an area of 6 to 8 acres when looking at other development so that they could have a school there should it become necessary.
Madam Chair, I met informally with both Kathy and Mr. Scott separately this morning because I was having a little muck guilt. Because as you may recall, these teams were formed right before New Year's, I believe. And obviously at that point, the state building authority came down from the mountain with the tablets. And so that changed our little education subgroup. And certainly just literally in terms of the timing of what work could or should we actually do in light of the fact that the school building authority has its own very well-defined schedule that will also include a special town meeting vote. Speaking of special town meeting votes. So Mr. Scott decided to, write what I was worried about was that I had missed something or we weren't doing enough from that particular team. And the truth is, as we've discussed, there isn't anything we can do formally in the muck process because of the school building authority's timeline. However, there is going to be, at least it sounds like, a small set aside as one of the 3 options or maybe 4 options at the end of the muck process to include an educational use. And again, all with the understanding that the school building authority and the school building committee may come up with a different outcome that doesn't even involve the Matakees property at all for an educational use going forward. Sorry for the long-winded way, but I want to just connect those dots as the person who was assigned and volunteered for the educational mucking about, which I have done none of. Thank you.
The other committee that hasn't met
boots.
and done anything is the municipal services team, and Bill talks about that. They've been holding back until they heard from all the other teams to kind of determine, whether there's any synergy between the groups. And now that they've heard back from the teams, they were going to having a muck brainstorming session in the next 2 weeks with regard to municipal services. I'm assuming you would be contacted directly as part of that by Bill Scott. And they're going to basically be leaving it at the brainstorming session because it's related to municipal uses, which kind of is governed by what the select board wants to do. I don't know if you want to go to individuals. I just want to make sure to point out that the recreation group is meeting next Wednesday at 6 o'clock for their second meeting. And then the Community Housing Committee is meeting on March 17th. And that would be their third muck around meeting.
Right.
I assume everyone will be dressed in green for that meeting, Madam Chair,
Especially me.
especially.
Especially you.
Maybe I was going to do this at committee updates, but the Housing Committee did meet with the Affordable Housing Trust on February 24th. And it was our second meeting, and the consultants, Barrett, helped collect all of the information from the first meeting and probably not the right word, lump it, but kind of get ideas, common ideas together into a limited number of ideas. And we actually did go around and vote. We don't have the result. I haven't seen any results on how that came out, but I'm sure meeting minutes will have it. But the ideas that we came together for influencing site design was, the main one was housing diversity. And it included, a lot of different ideas. Buildings with fewer units. They had POA and HAC and Habitat team proposals. The Governor Prentz site in Orleans is an example of one that's pretty nifty. It's got different kinds of housing, different sizes, so that it's like it's a subdevelopment of a development with each having its own little character. So that was an example of the housing diversity. The other one they went through were housing for veterans. There are several groups that there's the Housing in Dennis that was put together by the Cape and Islands Veterans Outreach Council as an example. There was some thought about the reuse of the current building. We had a fair amount of discussion about maybe salvaging the gym and the auditorium and I'm not sure what that other room is in Building E.
We call it the
The
music.
band and.
Music, it's the music group behind it.
Music, yeah. And if there was some way to perhaps salvage those, because they may be in better condition than the school. They do have, I believe, their own HVAC system, because no, they don't.
Oh, I don't believe they do.
Yeah, okay. That was, okay. The other thing we did talk about was the report and whether or not there's a way that the report that came out on the condition of the building. We talked about this last time.
That's finalized, correct?
It is, but they looked at systems.
Right.
They didn't look at buildings A through E.
Right.
And I'm not sure that we're going to get anything there. Then there was cluster housing combined with protecting undisturbed land. So this was one where we want to have some density, but more open space associated with it. There was discussion about how we maybe have a better relationship with the housing authority. And there was some fair amount of discussion about there is an RFP that's in process for the Forest Road site. And maybe having discussions with the Housing Authority to leave that open and have the Housing Authority pick up a portion of the housing segment at Mattakey's. That looked like it had a whole bunch of legal issues associated with it, but it was an idea. It was an idea. A Habitat partnership, like get on board with Habitat and let them run with it. And then single-family homes, smaller single-family homes with ADUs. There's a Marston Mills school reuse currently underway, and that's their plan to have not mini homes, but smaller single homes with ADUs built with them. And then single-family ownership. Have single families there. We also talked about senior housing, and then mixed use was one of the other categories. People talked about, having it be more the combination with commercial and residential. And then keep it as an educational use. Somehow, if the school committee and the school board needs more space, encourage some form of educational. Didn't necessarily need to be a grammar school, but keep it as some kind. So those were the ideas. And some of them fell off the table in terms of the voting and discussion about it. But at our next meeting, we'll see what the final three are.
We did meet, staff met with Barrett Planning, and they did do like a little matrix. So, and they asked them to vote 1, 2, 3. So your first choice got 3 points, 2 points, 1 point. And they did. And obviously the mixed housing types was the number one thing by significant.
Yeah.
So just a lot of different opportunities there. And then the different people who might use them, whether they're veterans, municipal employees, or seniors, or affordable, all of that can be integrated into these different housing types in different ways.
It was an interesting meeting. The Affordable Housing Trust, of course, has Robert Rittenauer on it, Mark Forrest. So we had, members of the town administration and the select board as part of the team. So, and Bill Scott was there to assist us. So we'll see where we come out at our next meeting. So that's my piece. We are the furthest ahead, I believe,
Yes.
of all of the committees.
One meeting ahead of everybody else.
Anything else on Muck?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, Madam Chair, do you want me to update on my?
Yeah, oh,
committee?
yes, yeah.
We had our open space meeting, which was last week. It was a,
I was there.
you were there.
Forgot all.
I know, that time. And, no, it's okay. It's fine. And it was a pretty spirited meeting. It really was. I thought Brittany did a nice job trying to keep it reined in. There was certainly some stuff that was a little bit eye-opening to the site. One being, Tar Pond, which is behind the school. Is it a vernal pool or is it just a pond? And that has to be determined because it does have some setback requirements if it is a vernal pool.
Because of the new,
That's right.
because of the new regulations.
Exactly right.
Sort of.
So there was discussion about that. There was also discussion that the Mattakey School site right now, as it's currently constituted, a very small portion of it is within the setback, what is of the wellfield setback. It won't affect any type of redevelopment, but it certainly was just something that was brought up in discussion. There was a lot of discussion about, passive redevelopment of it, meaning basically make it open space, or active redevelopment, whether it become, athletic fields or some other, whether it's housing or what. So we, as one of the points was the Open Space Committee has basically gone last of all the active committees that have met. And part of that is, we discussed was to really kind of hear whatever all the other committees say is how can the open space be incorporated into anyone else's plan.
Mhm.
And that's really the goal of it, is how can we actively incorporate keeping some open space on that site? And, not turning it into a wheat field, as I commented, but have it be appropriate development, but also taking into consideration that there should be some appropriate open space. So it was a good meeting. We're meeting again mid-April, which is after most of the other committees meet, for that, and if we need to have a third meeting, we will.
Yeah, I think one of the things that they were interested in is doing whatever you can to protect the resources out there. Obviously, there's some different core habitat, all of that blue that you saw. So it wasn't just protecting the individual wetland areas and the buffers to that, but maybe even some habitat in that
Right,
particular area.
Exactly.
So I think there's certainly an ability to accommodate all of the different things and protect the resources that are out there.
It is set, what we're talking, 70 or 80 acres.
70.
It is a big
It's
piece
a very large
of
piece.
land.
But when you look at the 70 acres, there's a lot of it that's already restricted because
True.
of
Yeah.
wetlands, et
Yeah,
cetera.
you can't touch
Mhm.
it, but you're right, but it's a
But
huge.
really, when you boil it down, it's probably more like 50 something.
It was, I believe, because Brittany did run a
She did.
map on that. I believe if memory serves me, correct me where I'm wrong, not counting any small, it was 38 acres of developable land.
It can be developed.
That
yeah,
could be developed.
Significantly.
And that doesn't include the part out front.
Yeah, I think that was I think she did a calculation of what was already disturbed.
That's right. Exactly right. That's what it was.
Let's see, Mattakey, the Margaret E. Smaltz turned into housing. You got the individual, if you look at it from it's a circle,
Mhm.
all little 2-room pods, if you will.
Oh.
They would make great little apartments, you got a gym and a cafeteria there already?
It was mentioned in the first
It's not a-
recreation
develop-
committee meeting that might be a good place for, like, if you had tournaments there, for dormitories, for like the players could stay there, the parents could stay at a hotel, and then they'd have like the little coach. Well, I don't know what they do. I'm not familiar with the tournaments, but that was one of the things that was mentioned, is maybe having that be dormitories for that. And then maybe even dormitories for seasonal employee housing.
It's amazing the different recreational opportunities so I was in DC a couple of weeks ago and I went to meet a friend for dinner. And when I walked in, there were a zillion little girls running around. Over 1,000 teams of cheerleaders were there for a convention. 1,000 teams, and each cheerleading team had 8, 10 kids on them. And imagine you could bring a whole event
Oh, yeah.
to the town with those types of things.
And
I never
hopefully,
even thought about cheerleading until I walked in and went, what the heck is going on here?
Big.
and hopefully the
Oh, yeah.
muck will, I assume, will keep an open mind about the gym and the auditorium. Because what, huge credit to our recreation department, who is getting, I would imagine, and I don't imagine, I know, pretty much every available minute for that gym space to be used. Right now.
It's being used right now.
That's what I mean. So,
There are 2 gyms, because you look at the one at Margaret E. Small and
well, right, but absolutely. But it'll be interesting to see as the muck continues to muck around about where the recommendations come down in terms of the main building and all the different letters that I can't even remember. And then the auditorium and the gym itself, notwithstanding some HVAC concerns, certainly is a vital part of the town's recreation program. And if all of a sudden that gym is offline because of insert reason here, that the ripple effect of that has to be accounted for. And maybe that includes the redevelopment of the land as a recreational use with even more gym space than what is currently there net. But in the short term of 24 months, the town will be without a pretty significant
Chunk.
piece of their recreation program.
and then the children will run amok.
I see what you did there, Jim. But again, that is part of the muck meeting
Will never get
process.
old.
Anything else on muck? Okay. May I have a motion to accept the minutes of February 19th, 2025?
They in here?
So moved.
Second?
Great, any discussion?
Did you second? Who seconded?
I did.
Dan.
All in favor?
Aye.
Abstained.
Committee updates. I gave mine on
Not in mine.
CHC.
Very end,
Very end.
very end, the last thing.
Okay.
Yeah. Got it.
Madam Chair, I have an update from the RAC.
And Kathy, if you wouldn't mind, if you could do, if there's anything more on short-term rentals meeting that you wanted to share with us? No, okay, good. Thank you for that. Yes.
Okay,
Jack.
the Water Resource Advisory Committee, wastewater resource, yeah, that. Water, wastewater, it's all water. The
Water.
word water was involved.
Page two.
We met on Monday, a couple of days ago. Some interesting news, none of it terribly surprising, but mostly good. We'll start at the new facility. Two things, the contractor has mobilized. There is work happening. So basically, the sewer plant's under construction, everybody. There you go. That's headline number one. Okay. The second part has to do with what to do with the fact that the state only gave us a permit for 370,000 gallons when we all know that for phase one, we need 1.9 million. So there's a little gap there.
A little
we
one.
could say. And the good news is, as has happened for several months now, is that our town officials and DEP have a working group, and they continue to meet. And there's been progress at Bayberry to the point where the state has now signed off, and they're now doing test samples and boring wells, or boring samples and test wells. I might have swapped that, my bad. But that work is happening so as to do two things, right? One is to capture a lot of the water that can't be captured, but number two is to help the golf course stay irrigated
Yeah.
in places maybe that don't even get any or don't get enough irrigation. So let's just say there's a lot of coordinating going on and a lot of possibility to then deal with the fact that when we get phase one finally up and running and hooked up, we're going to need a place for about 1.5 million gallons to go. If everybody's hooked up and flushing toilets
Right.
and taking showers. Yes, Jim, you're making a face.
If we're having a problem finding a place to discharge, why have we not considered, or maybe we have considered? You know, I go to Florida and they take the gray water and put it back on everybody's lawn. Spread out across the whole town. So how come we didn't look? at
Jimmy, Jim, that's a great idea.
Yep.
Unfortunately, the state of Massachusetts is not allowed at the present time. That's why we don't do it. It's a
It
state,
makes sense.
I can't answer that. It's a state restriction.
Interesting.
It is not allowable in the state of Massachusetts.
Recycled water like that, is it?
You're not allowed to use gray water as irrigation water in the state of Massachusetts.
Called?
Gray water.
Mhm.
You
Do it
need another,
everywhere.
you need another pipe.
You need
Yeah,
another pipe.
it's a
Yeah.
double, so it's a double pipe.
Should we stop everything we're doing and start putting in a second?
No, I'm seeing that clearly they've got an issue with
Yeah.
trying to find what to do with the gray water, and
Yeah.
that would have been a simple solution.
It's
I'm
not,
glad
it's
Ken knew the answer right off the
it's
top of his
not
head, because I did.
permittable at the moment.
Interesting. But you would think that given what Jim has just brought up,
Yep.
clearly state representatives and state officials are aware of the fact that there are many other places besides the beautiful Commonwealth of Massachusetts where this can be done.
And I
So,
don't think it's,
It is a solution. It's just a question of, is there enough political will?
and I can't imagine we're unique when it comes to putting sewering systems in, and particularly in towns that are more densely developed than we are.
If you think about it, that's
Third of
why
the
there's,
town.
that's why there's an outfall pipe in Boston that goes 25 miles out to sea to get rid of the liquid there.
Mhm.
Because I'm sure there's probably a lot of lawns around Boston that could use gray water, but you can't do it.
Well, very close to lawns. Let's talk about paving. So the good news is that just in time for the St. Patrick's Day Parade, which I believe is Saturday?
Saturday.
Yes, for some reason in my head it was Sunday, but no, it's actually Saturday. That the contractor, let's say, that needed to fix some sections of 28 that needed to be fixed, they have done some resurfacing. I don't know if anybody has driven down those sections.
It's much,
I would say it's better.
yeah.
It's much better.
And I think we'll just leave it there. But the good news is it's better intentionally, not because we all deserve better, I think, as a town, but also because there's the small matter of the actual parade that is happening. So
Sure.
wouldn't you know it, economic development sometimes forces action. Anyway, so that's good. That's a good news. So yes, just in time for the parade. Also, a couple of weeks ago at the select board meeting, there was quite a panic because, long story short, the state has a year-to-year application for the actual wastewater work through a separate program, and you have to get renewed every year. And as you know, we have a $207 million project, but then the state said, oh, by the way, we're only going to allocate 50 million a year. And oh, by the way, Yarmouth may only get 25, and everybody lost their minds.
Is that?
That was a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
So I guess I would say if we cut to today, the good news is thanks to the work of the town, mostly I believe Mr. Rittenauer and Jeff Colby, that crisis has been avoided. And the state basically said, don't worry, we can put all the contracts back under the right umbrella of the 2023 program
Right.
so that none of our funding, none of our zero interest loans are going to get derailed. A couple of weeks ago, as you know, the select board, rightfully so, wrote a very, let's just say, firm letter to try to get that fixed, and it has gotten fixed. So crisis averted, and all 7 contracts are now back under the SRF. There was a point a couple weeks ago where some were and some weren't, and that wasn't so good. But the good news is we're good. In the not as good category, contract 6 is the contract that has not been awarded yet officially, because that is the contract that includes the pump station that is in some what's the word, disagreement. There has not been a resolution as of Monday's meeting. However, all of the town officials that were at the meeting, as well as the consultants, are still optimistic and still acting as though there will be a fall 2025 start for that work, as well as the contract next to it. So again, everything west of Parker's River is what we're talking about. So there's that. I think that's about all that we should really talk about for today. The meetings continue to be fascinating, and very glad that the plant is under construction, because, you got to have something to hook up to. And that
It's
is
project-
actually
It's a
happening.
sign of progress too, and it's a visual sign of progress.
There it
People
is.
can see it.
So again, those meetings are the first Monday of every month. We have asked the public to come and speak and or voice their opinions, and we continue to make that offer. And there is a
What time-
hotline phone number,
Those meetings.
4 p.m.
That's
It's
what I
usually
thought,
about
late in
an
the
hour
afternoon.
and 10 minutes. There is an official hotline number that is staffed with a live human being. So it's really nice to know, as people are getting their letters and trying to figure out what to do and where to hook up, and if they have questions, they literally can call 771-7921, extension 1, and a human will answer during human hours, meaning work hours. But there's also an email address, and it is being well, I think, supported by our town staff, who are, as you can imagine, juggling a lot of balls.
Will, can I ask you a question? The pump station issue, that hasn't knocked us off schedule at all, has it?
No, and that's and you can imagine all of us on the RAC who serve, by the way, from Conservation Commission, there's an appointee, from the Finance Committee, as well as some very smart people who are at large. We're all very much like, hey, so what's going on with the pump station? So clearly we only meet once a month, whereas the select board meets twice a month. So it's possible that there will be a resolution at a select board meeting that we may not hear about. So I would say, if anybody hears anything, please let me know. But again, no one there, after multiple questions, was saying we can't start in the fall. So I'm going to interpret that to mean we still have another 60 to 90 days to kind of figure this
Negotiate.
out.
Mhm.
I mean, the good news is, if there is any, they can't do any work in the summer anyway because of Route 28 and the state's rules, and as well as the fact that it's summer. So there is a little bit of cushion in there, but I'm certainly hoping to bring better news at a future update. And of course, maybe there'll be one at a select board update.
Great.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Good stuff.
Thank you, Will. Kathy? Anything for us from you?
I sent you guys the Massachusetts Unlocking Housing Production Commission report. The link, and then the article that was done. Very aggressive ideas with different ways of trying to produce more housing. There's a whole bunch of them with regard to recommendations for zoning that I would recommend maybe you take a look at. It's hard to know how much of these are just pie in the sky ideas and how much will be latched onto and turned into something. I don't think any of us really thought that the ADUs might go anywhere, but that did. So it's a little concerning to see what might be going on here. One of the beneficial things, though, that came out of it was potentially allowing groundwater mounding to go from the 0.1 feet to the 0.5, that might help us with that. So they're really looking at, the main thing here is eliminating single-family zoning. So you could never have single-family zoning and no parking minimums. And then they were also talking about eliminating the need for two means of egress for multifamily housing up to 24 units and 6 stories. That seems like a death trap to me.
Okay, Susan, I looked at Susan. Susan was just like this. Oh my God.
Have they heard about the Coconut Grove fire or anything like that, you know?
Construct a tax
I
code.
think that'll
if
get
you-
out of
if you
the
kind
state
base
building
it on single family
officials.
residential zoning. I mean, that's like the bread and butter of a tax plan, a tax program is how do you divide up your land so you can figure out how to tax it? And if they say no more, well, anyway,
I predict in 30 years, Cape Cod is gonna look like Ocean City, Maryland.
you're absolutely right.
Hey, I'm from there.
I'm not saying
Maryland.
bad or good, I'm just saying it's gonna look like that.
I know what you mean.
It's a totally different.
All the
than what
Jersey,
Cape Cod-
all the Jersey
You
Shore.
won't see
where every
Patty
house is-
Page's sand dunes and salty air and,
No, that's, I hear what you're
Yeah,
saying.
You're right.
because they don't care.
How you decrease demand if you make it a less desirable place to live.
Oh, in terms of the state's approach.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Housing at any cost.
Mhm.
And then the other thing is, there's a flyer out here. I sent it to you guys about taking the CDBG survey. It's due March 21st. It's on the town website. I took it. So
Me too.
Can you remind me, because I missed a part of the select board meeting, how much money are we actually talking about here?
oh, it's not as
Yeah.
much money as you think. I think it's less than $200,000.
I defer as to whether the definition meets any threshold. I just didn't know what the number was.
Yeah, I think it's less than $200,000. Yeah. But we put that to good use, good targeted use.
Yeah, and we might as well take advantage now, because I think that's one of the programs that is very vulnerable in Washington.
Mhm.
Those are the kinds of things they're not going to be funding anymore.
But for
At
at least 4 years.
at least
Well,
they're
that's for the
they're
four-
up for,
next
they're up
4
for
years,
review,
right.
and part of the problem is a lot of people don't understand them.
Yeah.
So they say, good, get rid of it, because they don't understand what it does, and they can be very effective.
The problem, there are so many that are useless that some of the ones that are important are gonna get
Exactly. Yep.
sucked up with the useless ones.
The baby with the bathwater.
A little bit of hatcheting instead of scalping.
Anything
Kathy,
else?
is that state report on the website, on the town website?
Not on the town website. No, I think I sent you with the link, or maybe no, I attached the whole thing to that email that I sent out to you on February 27th.
Yeah, I have it. I was just wondering if it was.
No, yeah, it's
posted
not on the
anyplace
town
else. Okay.
website.
Madam Chair, I have one question and a comment, if I may.
Yep.
One is, I saw the appointment of the new recreation director, which is a promotion from within, which is very exciting from all the people that are much more intimately involved in recreation day to day than I am. So congratulations to that department. Has there been an appointment, or did I miss it? Because I didn't watch the last select board meeting. Has there been an appointment for a replacement at the health department that you know of, Kathy?
I don't think it's been officially
Okay, so when it is, we'll
negotiations with
so
someone.
we'll hear about it at a select board meeting? Okay,
Maybe.
well, I don't, okay. Joe.
No, it's a department. There's a division head, so I think there's a certain
It
time
has-
period where they have the ability to,
Well, just like the recreation department
Exactly. It's
head, they'll have
division.
to come to the select board, so I guess we'll see it on an agenda. Okay. Thank you for the clarification. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Anything else?
I think you may not have heard, but Bill Benetti's retiring as well, the
Oh.
Director of Natural
he is?
Resources.
Oh, really?
Oh, my God.
Is that old?
That's what I
No,
said.
Madam Chair, he's put in that many years. I don't know how old he is.
He's the 20 years.
I say, he's hit the
Probably
number.
38 or something crazy.
Yeah, right. He started when he was
Yeah, for as
16.
long as I can remember.
Dave Condon he's the acting, I
Right.
think he's going to be the acting.
When is the
director.
effective date, or is that already?
I think it's I was surprised that it was had officially had the act. I don't know whether he's taking vacation up until then, but by the middle of March.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, it
Well,
was
between
quick.
him and Carl, the last 3.5
Mm.
years has seen quite the turnover, a lot of brain
Dave's
drain.
really good.
No, of course, but I'm just saying the amount of, the two of them together have forgotten more about DNR.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
both
History
are
of the
very
town.
decades long.
That's what I
term.
mean.
Right.
Between the two of them, it's
And that
like,
front office person, Jane was there forever. too.
right,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
true. Well, congratulations to them.
Hey, Life
Mr.
goes
Reed.
on.
I told him I was jealous.
And Bruce Murphy, Bruce Murphy was a very long time as well.
Anything else?
Madam Chair, just one quick thing.
Yes?
Parkers River Landing, you can still buy a boardwalk plank, $350 for an individual, $450 for a nonprofit, and $550 for a business. See yarmouth.ma.us/plank.
Wow.
So we are working with Nick's Big Nick's Ride in order to have planks done for the 16 Fallen on Cape Cod. And we're going to try and put them all together in one kind of like area that's for, you know, kind of make it a veterans kind of memorial. The Cape Cod veterans have also gotten a plank. And the idea is maybe we can leave some blank spaces. So if other veterans groups want to have, so there'll be like maybe a veteran memorial section on
great.
the plank. So it was really
Great.
What a
good.
great idea. Yeah, terrific.
Madam Chair, you listed the upcoming meetings. Are we skipping a meeting?
Well, that was on the,
My apologies. I'm just being
Sorry.
I'm just being your friendly clerk.
oh, I just copied Kathy's.
Oh, I said the 16th, it's the 2nd.
I just didn't know if,
April?
you know, Ms. Williams is entitled to a vacation. I just figured that's what it
I think
was.
it's a great, I think it's a great
I was
idea.
gonna say, you hear a lot of objection? I do. Sorry, Madam Chair. Go ahead.
This is the problem.
Time off.
When I don't meet with Kathy
time
in
in 4 years.
advance.
No, it's my mistake, not yours. It's mine.
A
I
mistake.
said April 16th and it's April 2. You're lucky I had
Just
put
wanted to get your taxes
2025 and not 2024.
Her taxes are mine, April 16th.
So does Madam Chair.
Me too.
Gotta get them done before that
This is-
day.
So does Madam Chair.
Taxes to Joanne.
Well,
I got
Help
nothing.
with your taxes.
I mean, it's always worth asking, Madam Chair, about, are there other things coming towards us that have nothing to do with the LCP, the muck, and all the other good work we're doing? Because as a planning board, sometimes things come at us.
Yeah, yeah.
It was just,
Have administrative things to look at the zoning when we start figuring out what this ADU.
Yeah, I think he's looking
Other
at
stuff is-
business items maybe is what you're talking about.
yeah, I just meant
Yeah.
in terms of the next 3 meetings, are they all necessary? I don't know. And I wouldn't presume to answer that.
Yeah, I don't think there's any business items that I know of, but you never know when something kind of gets thrown in there. I do have some things about some scenic road thing. People wanting to remove some trees in scenic roads. I need to provide them with some information so they can put applications together. So we might see some of those, but probably not. Like definitely not at the next meeting because there's a 30-day public notice period. So I don't have anything in the near future. The April 2nd, I would like to have that conversation if we're ready to talk about action items and certain things that we can implement.
Good.
So,
May I have a motion to adjourn?
Don't move.
Second.
Any discussion?
Let's
All in
see.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank goodness. Call for that vote.